Arun had always dreamed of living near water. For years, he carried the picture of a calm lake in his mind, a place where the air was fresh, where the world felt slower, and where mornings would begin with the sound of rippling water instead of city traffic. He saved, worked, and planned until the day came when he could finally make this dream real. The Lakeside Lodge was everything he imagined. The wooden house stood proudly on the edge of the water. The roof was slightly worn from years of weather, but it added to the charm. From the front porch, he could see the wide lake stretching out like a mirror, reflecting the sky above. When he first stepped inside, the lodge greeted him with the scent of pine and old timber. The floor creaked under his feet, but it was not the kind of sound that bothered him. It was the sound of history, as if the house wanted to tell him stories of all the people who had once stayed within its walls. The windows were tall and clear, letting sunlight pour inside, painting the rooms in shades of gold. The fireplace stood quietly in the corner, waiting for the day it would be lit to warm the space during cold nights. Arun placed his bags near the entrance and walked from room to room. Each space felt alive. The living room had shelves carved into the wall, perfect for books he had been collecting over the years. The kitchen was simple, but it had everything he needed. The bedroom upstairs opened to a balcony that faced the lake. He stepped outside, resting his hands on the wooden rail, and breathed deeply. The breeze was cool, carrying with it the fresh smell of water and trees. He knew at that very moment that he had made the right choice. As the sun began to set, Arun prepared tea and sat on the porch. The light softened, turning the lake into a sheet of gold. Birds circled above, their wings catching the last glow of the evening. He watched the sky shift from orange to pink and finally to the deep blue of night. Stars began to appear one by one, shining faintly in the water's reflection. Arun felt peace, a kind of peace he had not known for many years. The city, with its endless noise and crowded streets, felt like a faraway memory. Here, he had found silence, but it was not an empty silence. It was the kind of silence filled with life, like the sound of crickets in the grass and the occasional splash of fish in the water. Before sleeping, he lit a small lamp in the bedroom and opened the window. The night air carried the gentle call of an owl in the distance. He lay down, listening, and drifted into a calm sleep. His first night in the lodge felt like a promise, a beginning of something meaningful. The next morning, sunlight poured into his room, bright and warm. Arun rose early, filled with energy. He brewed coffee and stepped outside to greet the day. The surface of the lake shimmered in the morning light. Mist floated above the water, soft and mysterious. He could see deer moving quietly among the trees near the edge of the forest. They looked peaceful, as if they belonged to this place more than he did, but they did not run. They simply lifted their heads, watched him for a moment, and then returned to grazing. Arun smiled. He felt like he was being welcomed by the land itself. He decided to explore the area. Walking along the shoreline, he noticed the soft crunch of leaves under his boots. The air was cool, but the sun warmed his face. Small flowers grew near the rocks, and dragonflies danced above them. He walked slowly, taking it all in, feeling as though every step tied him more closely to this new home. He imagined how life would be here. Long mornings with tea on the porch, afternoons of reading or fishing by the lake, evenings filled with the sound of nature. He thought about writing, something he had always wanted to do but never found the space or quiet for. Perhaps this lodge would give him the chance. When he returned, he took another long look at the house. It stood strong and steady, almost like a guardian of the lake. He felt proud, knowing that it now belonged to him. For years he had carried the weight of city life, working long hours with little rest. Now, here he was, standing in front of a home that symbolized freedom. That afternoon, he began to arrange his belongings. He placed his books on the shelves in the living room, each one reminding him of journeys he had taken through words. He set his old radio on the counter in the kitchen, knowing he would enjoy soft music while cooking. In the bedroom, he laid out fresh sheets on the bed and hung a few pictures on the wall. Slowly, the lodge transformed from a house into a home. By evening, he sat again on the porch with a notebook in hand. He began to write down his thoughts, not in any special form, just notes about what he saw and how he felt. He wrote about the lake that seemed alive, about the forest that whispered in the wind, about the birds that called to one another across the water. He realized that these words were more than notes. They were the start of a story. As night came again, Arun felt grateful. He had left behind a world of noise and entered a world of quiet beauty. He was certain that this lodge by the lake was where he was meant to be. He did not yet know what challenges would come, but in that moment, with the stars shining above and the lake reflecting the sky, he believed his dream had finally taken root. The morning after Arun's second night at the Lakeside Lodge began with brightness and calm. Sunlight streamed across the water, painting the lake with silver light. Birds chirped cheerfully from the trees, and the world seemed to welcome him again. Arun prepared a simple breakfast and enjoyed it on the porch. He felt as though his new life was slowly beginning to take shape. Every small task, from boiling water to opening the windows, carried a sense of joy. He was certain nothing could disturb the peace he had found. But by mid-morning, he heard the sound of footsteps on the gravel path leading up to his home. At first, he thought it might be a neighbor arriving to greet him. He imagined friendly smiles, a warm welcome, and perhaps even a story or two about the area. Arun stood, ready to shake hands and meet whoever came. Yet as the group came into view, he felt something different. It was not one person but several. There were 4 men and 2 women, all dressed neatly, with files and clipboards in their hands. They walked with quick steps, as if they carried important business. Their expressions were serious, not warm or inviting. Arun's smile slowly faded as he realized this was not the friendly visit he had expected. One of the men stepped forward. His voice was clear, and his tone carried authority. He introduced the group as members of the local homeowners association, often called the HOA. Arun had heard of such associations before, but he had not expected to meet one so soon. The man explained that the Lakeside Lodge was not just a private home. According to their records, the land was under the community's management. They believed the house was part of shared property and that Arun could not claim it for himself. Arun listened quietly, his heart beating faster with every word. When they finished speaking, he calmly opened the folder he had carried with him from the city. Inside were the official papers he had received when he bought the lodge. He showed them the purchase agreement, the map of the land, and the signature of the previous owner. His voice was steady as he said, "This is my home now." I followed every step to make sure it was legal. The group studied the papers but shook their heads. One of the women spoke next. She said rules were rules and the HOA had the right to decide what happened to properties in the area. They insisted the lodge should be handed back to the community. Arun felt a wave of surprise. Only days ago he had walked into this house full of excitement, and now strangers stood on his porch claiming it was not his. For a moment, he felt the weight of doubt pressing on him. Had he missed something important in the process of buying the lodge? Was there a hidden rule he did not understand? Still, he refused to let fear control him. He stood tall and repeated that his documents were valid. He told them he had trusted the process and believed in the truth of his ownership. His voice grew firm, even as the group continued to argue. The exchange lasted for nearly half an hour. The HOA members asked sharp questions, and Arun answered as best he could. When they realized he would not give up the lodge immediately, their expressions tightened. Finally, they said they would return with stronger action if needed. Then, without offering a handshake or a farewell, they turned and walked back down the path. When silence returned, Arun sat down slowly on the porch. His hands trembled slightly as he held the folder of documents. The peaceful morning had changed into a confusing challenge. He looked out at the lake, which continued to sparkle under the sun as if nothing had happened. Nature did not care about human arguments. Yet for him, the issue was heavy. That afternoon, Arun decided not to sit in worry. He walked into town to seek guidance. The town was small but busy. People greeted one another warmly in the streets, and the smell of fresh bread floated from a bakery. Arun felt comfort in the simple life of the town, but his heart remained unsettled. He asked for directions to the town office and was guided to a modest brick building near the square. Inside, he explained his situation to a clerk. The clerk listened carefully and asked for his documents. After checking them, the clerk said everything appeared proper but suggested the matter be reviewed by higher authority to prevent any dispute. The name of the governor came into the conversation, a leader respected in the region for fair decisions. Arun had not expected his matter to reach such a level, but the clerk assured him it was the best way. If the governor confirms your ownership, the clerk said, no one can question you again. Relieved by the idea, Arun agreed. The documents were sent for review, and he was told to wait for a response. Though he still felt nervous, he also felt hope. Someone official would see the truth. As evening returned, Arun walked back to the lodge. The setting sun cast long shadows across the trees. The water glowed once more with warm colors. He tried to hold on to the peace of the view. Though his day had been filled with tension, the lake still looked as welcoming as it had on his first morning. Inside the lodge, he prepared a meal and sat quietly at the table. He thought about the visit from the HOA. Their sudden arrival, their strong demands, and their refusal to accept his documents all played in his mind. He wondered why they wanted the lodge so badly. Was it because of its perfect location by the water? Was it because of its history? Did they have plans for it that he did not know? Questions filled his mind, but he reminded himself that answers would come in time. For now, he had to stay patient. He believed the truth would protect him. That night, Arun opened his notebook again. He wrote down every detail of the day, from the footsteps on the gravel path to the words spoken on his porch. He wanted to remember it all, not only for himself but also to create a clear record. Writing gave him calmness. It reminded him that he still had his voice, and he still had the lodge. When he closed the notebook and prepared for sleep, he looked once more out of the window. The stars above the lake were as bright as ever. He whispered a quiet thought to himself. This home is mine, and I will not give it away so easily. With that belief in his heart, he drifted into rest, ready to face whatever the next day would bring. The next morning began with a quiet fog over the lake. A soft mist floated above the water, and the lodge looked almost like a painting. Arun stepped outside with a cup of tea in his hand. He breathed in the cool air, trying to push away the memory of the visit from the HOA. Yet their words still echoed in his mind. He could not pretend it had not happened. The thought of strangers claiming his new home left him unsettled. Arun reminded himself of the clerk's words in the town office. The documents were already on their way to the governor. This gave him a sense of comfort. The governor was known for fairness, and if anyone could clear the matter, it was him. Still, waiting was never easy. Arun tried to keep busy. He cleaned the rooms, arranged books on the shelves, and polished the wooden furniture. Each task made the house feel more like his own. By afternoon, Arun decided to walk back to town. He wanted to ask if there was any update. The path through the trees was calm and shaded, with sunlight breaking through in small golden beams. Birds hopped from branch to branch, and squirrels chased each other playfully. Arun tried to let nature ease his thoughts. When he reached the town office, the same clerk greeted him with a kind smile. The clerk explained that the governor had indeed received the documents and had taken a personal interest in the case. Arun's heart lifted at these words. The clerk continued, saying that the governor had requested to meet him directly. The meeting was scheduled for the following morning at the governor's residence, not far from the town. Arun felt both nervous and hopeful. This was no small matter. To speak with the governor was something he had never imagined. Yet if this meeting could settle the problem once and for all, he was ready. The next morning, Arun dressed neatly and walked to the governor's residence. The building was simple yet strong, with wide steps leading to a tall doorway. Guards stood at the entrance, but their expressions were calm and respectful. They led him inside, where he was guided to a room filled with sunlight. The governor sat at a wooden desk, reading through papers. His presence was steady, and his voice was warm when he welcomed Arun. He asked Arun to sit and share his story in detail. Arun spoke clearly about how he had dreamed of a home by the lake, how he had bought the lodge with care, and how the HOA had arrived making demands. He explained that he had no wish for conflict, only to live peacefully in the home he had rightfully purchased. The governor listened without interruption. When Arun finished, the governor looked at the papers once more. He nodded slowly and said, "These records are clear. The lodge is legally yours. No one has the right to take it away from you." Hearing these words, Arun felt a great weight lift from his heart. For days he had carried doubt, wondering if he had made some mistake. Now the highest authority in the region had spoken. The truth was with him. The governor continued, explaining that sometimes local groups misinterpret rules. The HOA had certain responsibilities, but those responsibilities did not give them power to seize private property. The governor promised to send a written confirmation that would settle the matter. With that letter, Arun would have protection against any further claim. Arun thanked him sincerely. He left the residence with the letter already in hand. The walk back to the lodge felt lighter than ever before. The sun shone brighter, the air smelled fresher, and even the sound of the water seemed to carry joy. He held the letter close, knowing it was not just paper. It was his shield, his proof, his safety. When he reached the lodge, Arun placed the letter carefully on the table. He read it again and again, letting each word strengthen his heart. He was no longer afraid of footsteps on the gravel path. If the HOA came again, he would be ready. That evening, he brewed tea and sat on the porch as usual. The lake reflected the orange glow of the sunset. For the first time since moving in, he felt completely at peace. He knew challenges might still come, but he also knew he had truth and fairness on his side. As darkness settled, he lit the lamp inside and opened his notebook. He wrote about the meeting with the governor, about the calm yet firm way the leader had spoken, and about the feeling of safety the letter gave him. He wrote how the world seemed different now. The same lodge, the same lake, the same trees, but his heart was lighter. He also wrote about his gratitude. Gratitude for the chance to live in such a beautiful place. Gratitude for the governor who valued fairness. Gratitude even for the struggle, because it had taught him to stand firm. He realized that life was not only about finding peace but also about protecting it. The next morning, Arun woke with renewed energy. He cooked breakfast, watered the small plants near the porch, and walked along the shore. He felt more connected to the lodge than ever before. Each board of the house, each ripple of the lake seemed to remind him that this was his rightful place. Later that day, he thought about how the HOA would react when they learned of the governor's decision. He did not wish them harm or anger. He simply hoped they would accept the truth and leave him in peace. He believed that once they saw the letter, they would have no choice but to step back. As the day ended, Arun sat quietly with his notebook once more. He described the colors of the sky, the call of the birds, and the way the stars appeared one by one. He realized that his story was becoming larger than himself. It was not only about a man moving into a lodge. It was about courage, fairness, and the belief that truth always stands firm in the end. With these thoughts, he closed the notebook and smiled. The lake shimmered under the night sky, and Arun felt ready for whatever would come next. Arun woke early the next day with the governor's letter resting safely on the table beside him. He had read it many times, but the words still gave him comfort. The lodge was his, and no one could take it from him. The morning sun shone through the windows, filling the rooms with light. Arun felt calm, yet deep inside he sensed that the matter was not over. As he sat on the porch sipping tea, he heard a sound he had already begun to recognize. Footsteps on the gravel path. This time he did not feel the same nervousness as before. He stood tall, waiting. Soon, the group from the Homeowners Association appeared once again. Their faces carried the same serious expressions. They walked with purpose, as if they believed they could still press their claim. The leader stepped forward. His voice was firm as he asked if Arun had thought about their demand. He said the lodge should be returned to the community and insisted that rules were not to be broken. The others stood behind him, nodding in agreement. Arun listened calmly, then walked inside and returned with the letter from the governor. He held it out with steady hands. "This letter confirms that the lodge is mine," he said. His voice was clear and confident. The leader frowned as he read the letter. The words were direct and simple. The governor had confirmed Arun's ownership and warned that no further claims should be made. The group exchanged uneasy glances. For the first time, they seemed unsure. One of the women spoke gently, asking if Arun truly intended to live there alone. She said the community had long hoped to use the lodge for gatherings. Arun replied that he respected the community but reminded them that he had followed every legal step. He explained that he wanted only peace and that he was open to being a kind neighbor, but the home itself was not theirs to claim. The group grew quiet. The leader closed the letter and handed it back. His face was less firm than before. He admitted they could not go against the governor's words. Yet he warned that not everyone in the community would accept it easily. Arun thanked them for understanding and promised again that he wished no conflict. When they left, Arun felt a mixture of relief and caution. The standoff had ended in his favor, but the leader's words echoed in his mind. He knew the matter was not completely finished. Some might still resent his presence. That afternoon, Arun decided to show goodwill. He walked into town and visited a few local shops. He bought fresh bread from the bakery, fruit from a small stall, and tools from the hardware store. At each place, he greeted the shopkeepers warmly. Some greeted him back with smiles, while others looked curious or uncertain. Word of the dispute had clearly spread. One elderly man at the bakery spoke kindly. He told Arun that many people respected the governor's fairness and that the letter would protect him. He advised Arun to remain patient and to let time build trust. Arun thanked him for the advice. He realized that winning legal rights was only part of the journey. Building trust with the community was another challenge altogether. When Arun returned to the lodge, he placed the bread on the kitchen counter and sat on the porch with his notebook. He wrote about the standoff, about the firm way he had spoken, and about the change he saw in the faces of the HOA members. He wrote that strength did not come from anger but from truth. The following days passed more peacefully. Arun spent his mornings walking along the shore, his afternoons fixing small things around the lodge, and his evenings writing. The lodge grew more comfortable with every passing day. He repaired loose boards, cleaned the chimney, and planted flowers near the porch. Each improvement felt like a declaration. This was his home, and he would care for it with pride. Yet from time to time, he still saw members of the community passing along the road. Some waved politely. Others simply looked without greeting. Arun did not let it trouble him. He believed patience would show them who he was. One evening, as the sun set, he heard a knock at the door. This time it was not the HOA but a young man from the town. The man introduced himself as Ravi and explained that he had heard about the dispute. Ravi said not everyone agreed with the HOA's actions and that some people believed Arun's presence could bring new life to the area. He offered to help with small tasks around the lodge whenever needed. Arun felt grateful. He invited Ravi inside and shared tea with him. They spoke about the history of the lake, about fishing, and about the quiet beauty of the place. Arun realized that building friendships could be the key to easing tension. Ravi's visit gave him hope that trust was possible. The days turned into weeks. The HOA did not return in the same demanding way as before. Arun continued to live peacefully, though he never forgot the firmness of the standoff. It had taught him something important. Owning a home was not only about walls and roofs. It was about standing firm when challenged, about respecting truth, and about treating others with fairness even when they showed doubt. One evening, Arun stood on the porch watching the lake under the starlit sky. He thought about the journey so far. He had dreamed of peace, faced sudden conflict, and found strength through support from the governor. The standoff had tested him, but it had also shaped him. The lodge felt more than a house now. It was a symbol of courage, patience, and hope. He closed his notebook after writing these thoughts and placed it on the table beside the letter from the governor. Both the notebook and the letter reminded him of the path he was walking. He whispered quietly, "This is my home, and I will protect it with truth and kindness." The water shimmered under the moonlight, and the forest whispered softly in the breeze. Arun felt ready for the days ahead. He did not know what new challenges might come, but he believed he was prepared. The standoff had ended, but his story was far from over. The days at the Lakeside Lodge slowly began to form a rhythm. Arun would wake with the sunrise, open the windows to let in the fresh morning air, and listen to the sounds of the forest waking up. The lake shimmered differently every morning, sometimes silver, sometimes blue, and sometimes glowing gold. Each day felt like a gift. He often thought back to his first arrival and the struggles that followed. Now, with the letter from the governor on his table and his notebook filled with words, he felt stronger than before. One morning, while Arun was walking along the shore, he noticed children from the nearby town playing near the water. At first, they seemed shy when they saw him. They whispered to one another and stayed close together. Arun smiled warmly and waved. Slowly, they waved back. He picked up a flat stone and showed them how to skip it across the water. The stone bounced 3 times before sinking. The children laughed and tried the same. Soon, they were skipping stones together, their laughter ringing across the lake. That simple moment made Arun realize that building peace with the community was not only about letters and meetings. It was also about small acts of kindness, about being open and friendly, about sharing the beauty of the place. In the following weeks, more people from the town began to visit. Some came out of curiosity, others out of genuine kindness. Arun welcomed them with tea and fresh bread. He shared stories about his life in the city and listened to their stories about the lake. He learned that the lodge had once been used for gatherings many years ago, which explained why some in the community had felt such strong attachment to it. Instead of feeling threatened by that knowledge, Arun felt honored. He told them they were always welcome to visit, as long as they respected that it was now his home. One afternoon, Arun invited Ravi, the young man who had first visited him, to help repair the old wooden bench by the porch. Together, they sanded the wood and tightened the loose nails. As they worked, Arun realized that this simple act of cooperation was more powerful than any argument. By the end of the day, the bench looked almost new, and Ravi promised to bring his family to see the lodge soon. Arun's heart grew lighter with every new connection. He knew not everyone in the community would change their minds quickly, but he also knew that patience and kindness would soften the hardest hearts over time. Evenings at the lodge became special. Arun would sit on the porch with his notebook, writing about the day. He wrote about the children skipping stones, about the visitors who came to share stories, and about the quiet moments when he sat by the fire with tea in his hand. His notebook became more than a record of events. It became a reflection of his journey, a reminder of how far he had come. One evening, he wrote, "Peace is not given. It is created. It grows from truth, patience, and kindness." As he read those words aloud, he felt proud. The lodge was not only a home but also a teacher. It taught him lessons about courage, fairness, and community. One morning, a gentle knock sounded at his door. To his surprise, it was one of the women from the HOA. She did not come with papers or demands. She came with a small basket of fruit from her garden. She smiled politely and said she wanted to make peace. Arun welcomed her inside, and they shared tea together. She admitted that the HOA had acted too strongly at first, and she hoped the community could now move forward. Arun thanked her for her honesty. They spoke for nearly an hour, and by the end, both felt a sense of relief. That visit marked a turning point. The tension that had once surrounded the lodge began to fade. More neighbors visited, not to argue but to connect. Arun felt that his place in the community was slowly being written, not through conflict but through friendship. The seasons began to change. Summer sunlight softened into the golden hues of autumn. Leaves turned red and orange, floating gently down to the ground. Arun spent afternoons sweeping the porch, enjoying the cool breeze. On weekends, Ravi would join him, and together they prepared firewood for the coming winter. The lodge grew warmer and cozier, filled with the scent of pine and the crackle of fire in the evenings. Arun often stood by the lake at sunset, watching the water reflect the sky. He thought about the journey that had brought him here. He remembered the uncertainty of the HOA's first visit, the firm voice of the governor, the standoff on his porch, and the slow but steady growth of trust. Every part of the journey had shaped him, just as the lake shaped the shore. One evening, as stars began to appear in the sky, Arun closed his notebook and held it against his chest. He whispered, "This lodge is my dream, but it is also my lesson." It has shown me that truth stands strong, that kindness builds bridges, and that patience brings peace. He sat on the porch until the night grew deep, listening to the sound of crickets and the soft splash of water against the rocks. The lodge stood quietly behind him, not just a house of wood and stone but a home of memories and meaning. Arun knew the story was not over. Life would continue to bring new challenges and surprises, but he was ready. The lodge by the lake had given him more than a place to live. It had given him courage, peace, and a sense of belonging. As he prepared to sleep that night, he looked once more out the window. The stars shone brightly over the lake, and the reflection danced on the surface of the water. Arun smiled and whispered, "This is my new beginning." And with that thought, he closed his eyes, resting peacefully in the home he had fought for, protected, and embraced with all his heart.